We have sponsorship from Burger King.
I'm trying to turn it so that the logo is not visible, actually.
Have it your way, man.
That is not what we're here to talk about, Glenn. We're here to talk about knowing when a relationship is no longer serving you. Essentially, well, when do you know when it's time to go? I like that. Rhymed. Did you like that?
You are a rapper, man.
No, no,
You
no,
got
no,
flow.
no, no, no. Please, no, no, no. I'm imagining what that would look like. No, 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 no.
No, it's very important to know because the worst thing is to be in relationships that just take away from you and you're just miserable and unhappy.
Yeah, I think there's two sides to it. One is leaving good relationships too early, and the other is leaving bad relationships too late.
No,
Right.
agree. Like either way, it's painful.
Either way.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to help y'all with, or at least we're going to share some ideas in this episode. Welcome to 12-Week Relationships. This is your place for better relationships in weeks, not years. My name is Pye.
I'm Dr. Glen.
Now, when we say relationships, we mean all of them. And yeah, that starts with the one that you have with yourself, and it works on outwards to everyone around you. But this episode is part 5 in kind of a series that we're doing to help people understand what it is that we do in coaching. And yes, we do offer personal as well as couples coaching. It's available at 12weekrelationships.com. This message is brought to you by 12weekrelationships.com.
Oh, beautiful, man.
We're our own sponsors.
And Burger King. Have it your way, man.
Yes.
There you go.
No. No. I'm a little bit ashamed with myself that I got Burger King this morning. But
It's all good,
I
man.
used to work at Burger King.
Oh, did you?
I used to work at Burger King. That was my very first legit job. And I still go there today as a 42-year-old.
Wow.
Which is
okay.
to say that, like,
Have
I
it your
wasn't-
way, man.
I wasn't that put off by working in that environment, which means that it's, as a fast food environment, it's not bad.
There you go, man.
You know what? Let's do this, Glenn. So, look, knowing when a relationship is no longer serving you. I think the main thing here, the main thing that you and I are trying to get to is in our coaching model, in core value focused therapy, there is no right and there is no wrong when it comes to a relationship. I think there's a lot of guilt and association with, like, well, I don't want to say no and I don't want to leave, and how do I know this, and I feel guilty. And I think it's important first to understand that whatever relationship that we're talking about, there's not really a right or wrong. There's a choosing what's right for you.
Exactly. And this whole process is you have to know who you are.
Correct.
If you don't know who you are and what you stand for and what's going to make you happy, then you're not going to be able to have healthy relationships.
Yeah.
Period.
And what we want for people is we don't want you to leave a good relationship too early, which is often the case in terms of marriage. A lot of marriages, they can be repaired and put into a really beautiful place where it's better than it ever was. And those can be left early because people don't understand how to resolve it. And at the same time, there's also a lot of relationships. And when we talk about coaching, we're specifically talking mostly about marriages because you don't usually go to coaching for just friendships and type stuff. There's a lot of marriages where it's fundamentally not going to work. And we want them to be able to recognize that and to be able to understand how to move on without feeling the guilt and the pressure of making something that's legitimately toxic try to be healthy. And it can't be.
No, I agree with you. So once you get to the core values, once again, it separates like your individual accountability, how healthy is a relationship, and then do you either try to work on yourself because the relationship is actually pretty good and you have to do work on yourself to build it to make it better, or you're in a healthier place and it's time to let relationships go.
Yeah. So our goal in this episode is really to kind of help people with these two places. Like we don't want to leave something that's good before we've really put in our the work, to make it good. And at the same time, we don't want to stay in something unhealthy just because, we feel like we have to or that we should. So it's understanding, and we're going to try to help and get to a place where our listeners might have a few different ideas and a better perspective on this.
Yeah.
So this is part 5 of that series that we're doing to kind of help people understand what we're doing. And what we're talking about really is when your core values are not aligned, and we're going to relate this to all relationships. So knowing when a relationship is no longer serving you, being friendship, being, a business partnership, being a marriage, romantic relationship, whatever it might be. But basically what we're really talking about is that there's a misalignment in core values, right? Can you describe what that is?
So for example, core value is the why behind what you do,
Mm-hmm.
So for example, we talked about spirituality, so spirituality isn't the core value, it's the why behind it. So if the why is, it gives me purpose because I want to change the world, purpose would be your core value.
Mm-hmm.
If it's, I like hanging out with friends, then it's socializing and, connection, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's getting to the core of why you do what you do. And once you do that, then you can use that as a barometer to assess which relationships honor what's important to me and which don't. And then at that point, you can start making decisions about what you want to do.
Well, and to go a tiny bit deeper into what you just said, you said connection, right? You can hang out with friends because those friends help you to personally grow. You can hang out with friends because those friends bring you closer to God. You can hang out with friends because those friends make you feel connected and have that close relationship. All three of those would be different core values for the same outward action. And that's what we're really talking about, right? We're talking about going past the behavior. Oh, I really value reading and education, or I really do this and this is who I am, and understanding why you do that particular thing. Like changing the world, for example. We've had a number of people in our case studies as well as within our clients who have said, I really just want to make a difference. Well, why do you want to make a difference? What is the underlying driver of that? We've gotten to several different things. What are some of the responses on what are some of the underlying core values of that behavior? I want to make a difference.
So it can go to, be serving the community,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it can be a really noble act of like helping others. It can go to, I want to be wealthy as possible.
Mm-hmm.
I want to make a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
It can go down to
Legacy.
Legacy. Like I want to leave a legacy. It can go down to individual ambition. Like
Mm-hmm.
I just want to succeed in life.
Mm-hmm.
And so, once you get that answer, then, okay, that is your driving factor. That is your core value.
Correct.
Yeah.
So when those values are in alignment, then what we see in a relationship is that we can better understand each other. We relate to each other. We feel a sense of reward when we spend time together. We want to spend time together, right? It improves desire in the relationship. And when misaligned, we have a hard time understanding each other. In a marriage, for example, if one person is, let's say, legacy is their core value driver, and the other person is connectedness, and I'm going to say you're legacy and I'm connectedness. Okay?
All right. Let's do it.
Let's
It's all
act
about
this
me,
out
man.
in play right now.
Let's do it.
Glenn, all you do is work. And even when you're home, you're not with our children.
But I'm with the children 3 hours a day. They're playing video games. I'm doing my work and they're there. We're together.
We have 8 children, by the way.
We have H. Wow.
Yeah,
we got busy.
Yeah, we were
Yeah.
rabbits. Well, yeah, I just feel like even when you're home, you're not really here. And like, I can never actually connect with you.
But we're talking right now. We had dinner together.
We're talking because I'm upset.
Yeah, but we were talking before you were upset. And I'm with the kids. And we're here right now.
But what are you thinking about? Are you thinking about more work stuff? Are you thinking about...
I'm doing both. I mean, right now, it's all about you because now you're mad.
I like that. It's all about you. Okay. This would be like a typical conversation that would be a revolving argument. We would have this every time I feel like you're working too much and that you're not connected enough, because I want connection. I want that sense of closeness.
Yeah.
And each time you're physically present, you think that you're doing that, but you're not, because you're not giving me what I need. No, when we're together, we're not really talking. And you say, but we are talking. So this is that lack of understanding in one another's viewpoints. I don't know. To me, it just looks like you're hyper ambitious and you don't care about our family. For you, you're trying to show up, but you're thinking of this, I want to make a difference. I want to leave a legacy. I want to help my family by leaving a legacy. So our values are not in alignment. Now the question goes to, well, I know everybody wants to know, how do you align values? Probably that's not this is a process, right? This is essentially what core value focused therapy is coming into alignment and then therapizing around that whole thing. And it takes time. But the question is, at what point do you know whether you should stay and work on it or that it's not going to change?
Well, I mean, I think in that example, like for example, legacy building, like there has to be sacrifices that are made, right? So for example, if I'm the one working, financially providing, building a legacy, trying to leave a legacy for the family, that means I'm working really long hours.
Yeah.
Whereas you're staying home and you're taking care of the kids, right? So there's two vital responsibilities that are taking place, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think number one, it's appreciating the values that are brought within the relationship and honoring that. Like instead of getting mad at me, like, why aren't you more of a family person? It's understanding like this is what I'm doing because this is what I'm passionate about. And on the flip side for you, connectedness and family, that's your passion and that's what's driving you. And so it's honoring that this is who we are. And so we get to blend this lifestyle together.
Yeah.
So there's an understanding component. So instead of like forcing change or trying to force the other person to do what you want them to do, it's really understanding and appreciating what each person brings to the relationship.
Yeah.
Second, then it's like blending the core values, right? So for example, if I was being honest with myself in this example, I'm there physically, but I am not connecting and I'm not available to the kids. I'm not available to you, right? I'm not really engaged emotionally. The kids can feel that I'm not there, right? So I would really need to honor that value and be more present, put work away, and really be available for the kids and with you during that time. That would be honoring your core value.
Mm-hmm.
On the flip side, when I'm working, you would have to honor the fact that I'm working and I got things to do. So you can't place all these family things on me during the times that I'm not spending that family time together. And it's really having those discussions, really reaching a middle point versus this kind of superficial, let's use I statements.
Yeah.
Let's use I statements. I feel like you're not listening to me. I feel like I am available. I feel like I am present. It doesn't get to the heart of the matter versus like, you're right. Connection, family is important to you. I need to connect more. I need to be available.
Yeah. And I think one of the key points in answering that question of knowing when to stay and when to go, it comes down to what you said, having the discussions, right? If you're having the arguments, and I know arguments aren't fun, they're emotionally draining and whatnot, but if you're having the arguments, if both people are in a place where they're willing, if the effort is being made, if they want to go forward and like, you should pursue it. Like you've created a positive life for the most part, but things are just a bit out of alignment. This is worth staying and figuring out and whatnot. Versus if you're at a place where, and again, this is just one simple rule, but if you're at a place where the other person or both people are just unwilling, we're here and I have no desire to do anything. And the way that looks is that you don't have the conversation. You don't argue. You don't, one person says, oh, this is just you being you again. And you can see visible signs of contempt. There's a complete loss of regard for each other. And there's no desire to even like put in the effort. Then it's very likely not going to be something that changes. If you're saying that one or both people are unlikely to want to try, then there's nowhere for it to go.
No, and then that's usually the pattern. When I'm seeing the couples, is they're like, when we were building our relationship, we were fine, right? Like when we were trying to build our life and we were getting our home and we're doing all these things, it was fine. Why did it turn wrong? And the truth is, when you're trying to build a life, you're kind of in the survival space of building a life to survive. And then once you get to the point like you've accomplished that, now it's about the quality of your life and the quality of the relationship. And that requires work. That's a blessing to do. So like in that example of legacy building and family and connection, you've earned the right to actually build this relationship so both of you can be happier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to come back to that specific example in just a second. I want to give, a wise man actually once said to me these words. I don't want to say his name because he likes to remain private. And this was like 20 something years ago. Yeah, I think it was 20 years ago. Holy crap. Okay.
When you're at Burger King, right?
Yeah. After Burger King. So he said to me, divorce doesn't solve your problems. And usually whenever I'd heard that statement used prior to that, it was always in a religious context where someone was saying divorce doesn't solve your problems, you need to figure it out, right? It was there is no other solution, you got to figure it out. Divorce is not a solution. That was the kind of usage of that statement. But he said divorce doesn't solve your problems, it just changes your problem set. And then over the years I kind of thought on that more, and I thought, it doesn't change your problems, it changes your problem set. Or doesn't solve your problems, it changes your problem set. Well, I might add to it. Divorce doesn't solve your problems. It changes your problem set. And sometimes a new problem set is the most healthy option, depending on the circumstances. And then thinking on it a little bit more, I got to a place where I kind of came with this analogy. For me, when I think of divorce, I think of a wrecking ball. Like like a building wrecking ball, right? I would say that the majority of buildings, if a building has a decent foundation, if structurally it's okay, the majority, and I would think that this is the majority of buildings, right?
Mm-hmm.
That renovation and rehabilitation of the building is not only possible, it's far more effective, it's faster, it's less costly than just tearing the whole building down, right? And that's kind of the way I look at divorce. So in most cases, marriages have that healthy foundation, or they once did. And it's maybe gotten damaged and the building is still structurally there, but there's a lot of things going on inside. But going back to the building, in some cases, the building's foundation is so messed up. It's off kilter. It's got cracks in the foundation. It's got whatever it is. The structural integrity of the building is so compromised that there is no amount of renovation, rehab, or anything that could fix the building. And in that cases, you bring in the wrecking ball, and divorce would be that wrecking ball. And your intention is to knock down the building, but you have to understand that when you knock down a building, you're not just destroying the building, you're also potentially causing collateral damage to buildings around it. You're also creating tons of rubble and junk and garbage that has to be cleared out. And once that garbage is cleared out, you now have a foundation that has to be dug up. And then you have to rebuild the foundation from the ground up. And I couldn't think of a better analogy of divorce. You not only tear down the building, but there is going to be some collateral damage to the people and everyone around you.
But I love that analogy, and to me, I hear like it defines whether you're healthy or unhealthy, regardless of the circumstance, right? Because if you're a healthy person and you have a firm foundation, even though you wipe the building away, which is divorce, right? When you build, the structure is still strong. So whether you stay, leave, the decision, regardless of the choice you make, it's still going to be a healthy thing, regardless of what you do.
Tell me more. I don't know what you mean exactly.
Like, for example, regardless of where you are in your life right now, like you're in a healthy space, your structure, like if you're the building,
your personal structure,
your base is strong. So whether you stay in a marriage, divorce, the outcome doesn't matter as much as your base is strong. You're going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Versus like a person that's in a swampland, right?
Mm-hmm.
Their structure is so unstable. Even if you build on top of that and it looks really good, and you spend so much time making the top of the building really good, eventually it's just going to crumble because you don't have stable structures in your life. You're not a person that's stable yourself.
Yeah, well, and that's a great point, is that when you're talking about this marriage, you're really talking about two buildings, right?
Yeah.
You're talking about two buildings that each have their own foundations that were built up, and then they are now like combined buildings. So in some cases, one person, their foundation is sound. In some cases, the other person isn't. And in some cases, both people have messed up foundations and they're unhealthy. Either way, though, it's understanding that in the process of divorce, you're taking down one thing and you're creating a whole new set of problems, clearing the rubble, controlling collateral damage, all the other stuff that's going to happen. And that has to be worth doing. And in my opinion, which I would think is our opinion because we are the same person. Now, in my opinion, that is it makes sense to go down that route when your other options have been exhausted.
No, I agree, but I mean, even so, like, you could look at one person just on the outside, on the superficial. They have a marriage, they didn't divorce. On the outside, they're doing okay, but they're miserable.
Mm-hmm.
Versus another person that, let's say, they went through 2 divorces, but man, they grew so much from those experiences. I would say that that's a healthier person.
Oh, 1000%.
Yeah.
It is. And I'm not saying, I guess this is where I'm saying something that was once healthy, I think is worth putting in the time and the effort to see if it can be restored.
Yeah.
But yeah, you are right that you can also have other cases where it was never healthy to begin with, and there's nothing there to be salvaged. And that would be the case of like two buildings who are both in swampland and both in.
And you got to relocate.
You got to relocate. Like this was just a bad idea.
Yeah.
Like from the get-go, this was just a terrible idea. For sure, it can be any of these scenarios, but it's never a one-size-fits-all. You should, you got to stay and you got to work through this and you got to do this. And the interesting thing is that we can pull back a second and escape this idea of marriage for a second. Just look at the concept of friendships and other relationships that you might have in your life, right? When those relationships present misalignments in values, there's a natural distancing effect that happens. We don't talk about friendship therapy because it's not really a thing. Most of us don't, even with our closest friends, we don't pursue the idea of going to therapy with our friends, right? What ends up happening is if our values shift or we discover that we're not, as similar as we thought we were, the phone calls just become less frequent, the invites less often, and we slowly distance ourselves until we just chat once a year.
Yeah, there's a letting go.
Mm-hmm.
It's a letting go process. It's not a right or wrong. It's just, okay, this relationship has changed its course and we're just going in different directions.
Yeah. The reason why we try so hard, though, with marriage is because of the social and the legal ramifications of divorce.
And how it's perceived.
It's perceived in a certain way. And we have this buildup of what this thing is. But in reality, what we're talking about is the same thing, a relationship that's gone south. So I do think business therapy for partnerships might be a thing.
Because, that would be a healthy thing.
There would be enough on the line to make it worth going to therapy, basically, right?
I agree.
Okay. So we generally understand that something that's unhealthy is going to have a misalignment in values. Why don't we present what that misalignment might look like in a couple different contexts? So we have the relationship standpoint. We did the marriage one, right?
Okay.
What if we did a friendship one?
So once again, let's use independence versus loyalty.
Okay.
Loyalty. So that came out a lot.
Am I the loyal one or are you the loyal one?
I'll be the loyal one.
You'll be the loyal one.
You can be the
independent one.
Yeah.
Okay, what did I do?
Dude, you're always never hanging out with me, man. Every time I call you, you never want to hang out. We try to get together, you're not seeing our friends anymore.
Yeah, man. I mean, I'll hang out when I want to hang out, dude, but I don't know why you're so pushy about it.
Because we're friends, man. You got to be down with friendship.
I am down, dude, but like, why can't I be your friend and hang out when I want to hang out? Like, why you gotta?
Because that's not how friendship works, man.
I mean, who makes that rule? It's how it works to me. I guess I'm a little bit antisocial. Why can't you respect that?
That makes you selfish, man. You're just selfish.
You think I'm selfish because I don't come and hang out?
Yeah, pretty much. Everyone else understands. Like within our group, like we all get together and we make an effort. We prioritize it. But
you know what, bro? I don't got time for this, dude. I'll chat with you later.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of where the bros would end the conversation. That would be around.
Yeah, okay.
It's starting to get uncomfortable.
That was a clean version. Yeah,
I don't got time for this, bro.
I was going to be like, you're like Burger King, have it your way. And then I was going to hang it up.
Yeah, I do have it my way. That's why I am at Burger King, yo.
It's back to the rapper, man. But anyway.
But that would be a perfect example of that misalignment, right? Where you're taking my independence as a personal assault on the relationship. Like, I don't value it enough. And I'm taking it as like, I'm not even thinking along those lines.
Right. Like, I'm projecting all these things onto you based on my core value of loyalty.
Yeah.
All I'm seeing is you're just being disloyal versus trying to understand who you are as a person.
Yeah. I'm like, no, dude, why can't I just hang when I want to hang, man?
Yeah. And that's a good point.
Yeah.
And that's a healthy thing. And why am I projecting all that onto you when I have other people I could do that with?
Okay. Let's do the business partnership.
All right. Let's use that example, the family and then the business. That one example you're talking about where there was a cutoff with that person.
Okay, so we're gonna say, I would say that in that case, it wasn't family so much. It was like one person specifically said, when it comes to time, like when I'm presented with the opportunity to spend time with my friends or my family, I'm always going to choose them because I can always work on the business later.
Okay.
So what value would you place that under? Connectedness?
Maybe even just loyalty. Aren't they choosing loyalty of family over business? Or connectedness? I guess connectedness,
You know,
yeah.
if I were to go a step deeper, that value was driven by this life is short type thing. Life is short. I'm going to spend time
So pleasure and enjoyment.
doing things. Yes. Pleasure and enjoyment.
Pleasure and enjoyment.
Yes, that's what it is.
Okay.
Okay. So pleasure and enjoyment was my driver. Yours was, let's say, making a difference.
Okay. All right, man. So I don't understand why you're like cutting off doing what we need to do to build this business. We agreed, and then now you're not doing it anymore.
Dude, I'm doing what I need to do, man. I'm just doing it, from home and when I'm on hanging out. Like I can still work when I'm in Hawaii, man.
Yeah, but it doesn't work that way. When you gotta like this is a commitment. We're building this up, and you need to be able to do whatever's required to make this work.
I thought I was doing what's required. I mean, just because I want to spend time with my friends and stuff, that doesn't mean that I'm not working.
Yeah, but I'm not doing that because I'm prioritizing this business and being of service, trying to make a difference. That's what we agreed upon when we started.
Well, is your issue that I'm not working enough?
Yeah.
Okay. But look, I mean, when I have friends that come in town and stuff, I'm gonna spend time with them, man, because that to me is the most important thing. Like we can work on this at any time we want to.
Yeah, but my point is that you can do that if we have a 9 to 5 job. This is a business.
But that's why I don't work a 9 to 5 job.
But business requires more time and effort to establish. Once we get to that place, then this is all good. But right now, I don't think it's appropriate.
Well, I guess I don't want to do this business then because I didn't leave my job just so I could do. I mean, I do what I do because it gives me all the time that I want to spend time with friends and with family. Those are the things that matter, man. I don't want to go and create a 9 to 5 job for myself.
But that's the whole point. You're treating it like a 9 to 5 job versus this is a business.
Yeah. Why did you want to be my partner to begin with?
I thought you had the same values I had, man.
I guess not.
I guess not, man.
Boom.
Boom. We got acting skills, right?
Yeah. Good.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
Yeah, we're both pretty terrible. By acting skills, we're both pretty horrible. That almost is a play-by-play case study right there.
Yeah.
Went down exactly that way. And the interesting thing was, more often than not, almost just like a romantic relationship, that played out in such a similar way where when they met, they both recognized things in each other that they liked. And they perceived a set of values that didn't exist, but that they wanted to see. So you kind of place these values onto me of like your desire to make changes and differences and all these different things. And you kind of assumed that I shared those values too, but I didn't. And I kind of like that you had those values, but I also like to spend time and have fun. And that's part of the thing. What I'm attracted to you is because you kind of, I don't know, I admire that about you, right? I admire that you want to change and you want to do these things and you're ambitious and all those things. And you probably admire in me that I like to have fun and have a good time. And so we throw around this idea of a partnership, and yeah, we've known each other for months now and it's been great, man. We have a good time.
But that's such a superficial reason to get into business together.
Oh, it absolutely
is. It
is.
takes way more understanding and knowing how's this going to work out.
But how often does that mirror getting engaged or marriage?
No, it's true. Like, oh, this is it. Like on the surface, everything looks so great versus doing the deeper work. And what's going to happen when push comes to shove and there's stress and we need to get things done. And on the day-to-day, what's this going to look like?
Yeah, I mean, it can feel incredible just creating a friend on that level, right? Where you're admiring something in me, I'm admiring something in you, and and we both have so much fun, and we're hanging out together. It's exciting, it's fun, it's adventurous, it's all those things. It's what we would say is that it's filled with risk. It's that excitement and that adventure, right? That feeds desire. Well, now add sex to the mix. Not us, because we're just bros, right? We're bros that went into
We
business
had
together.
8 babies together, man. That was
That's a different case study.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, but you know, when we're talking about a romantic relationship, you add sex to the mix, and that fun adventure that you would have in a new friendship turns into this euphoric high of a new romance, and it leads to very quick life decisions where you perceive that I have a certain set of values and I perceive that you have a certain set of values, and we discover, you know, 6 months, a year down the road that we don't.
Yeah, and you're building a life together, and then now possibly kids in the mix and a family and all those responsibilities, and everything is going to come out. Your real core values are going to come out.
For sure.
Yeah.
So now going back to, let's say that we were to go back to that marriage example. And let's say that we were actually to understand. So what we do is we sit down with the clients. We help them to map out their own core values in this core value roadmap. Well, they have their own, you have your own, and then we create this roadmap of where the relationship needs to go together, right? We help them understand past trauma, all the things that led to that place, and then start giving them tools to be able to recognize. So once they get to that place, we get to watch these conversations shift dramatically, because now they know how the other person is operating. So let's have that conversation again as husband and husband, but understanding one another's values.
Okay.
So mine was connectedness and
Okay.
family. Yours was legacy.
Legacy. Okay.
So look, I want to spend more time with you. The kids want to spend more time with you. And I get that you feel like you're spending time with us when you're home, but you're still thinking about the business and legacy building. And I get that. I'm supporting you in this by watching the kids, and I'm taking care of the home, and I'm doing these things so that you can focus on that. I need you to focus on connecting when you're home.
No, I totally understand. Like, you know, I appreciate everything that you do in the house. You know, it just feels really safe. Like the kids are always coming to you. Like whenever we're doing activities together, they're always running to you for safety and support, and you provide that comfort. So I really appreciate that. And then I know that I have to focus more on legacy building for our family.
Yeah, but when you're home and you're on your laptop and you pull out your phone, you can see how that pulls you away from what I need, right? Like that feeling of being close to you is gone at that point.
Yeah. So what can I do to make this better?
I mean, I would like to do this. Like if you need an extra hour at work or whatever you need, then I can do that. But when you get home, what if we set a rule that there is no phone, there is no computer after a certain point?
Okay, that's fine. But also, legacy is important to me too. So is it okay that like I'm more involved in the activities that they're doing, whether it's sports, whether it's the things that they're doing academically, because that falls in line with me wanting them to grow and build their own legacy. So,
I think they would love that. I would love that.
so I would love to have more activities based on that versus just kind of staying home and kind of doing these things, which I still want to do, but then that just falls in line more with what I'm about.
So you're saying that sometimes you don't like that we just kind of stay home and chill in the evenings and stuff like that.
But like you're going to their soccer games and you're going to their, their music practices. I want to be able to go to that because that falls in line with helping them grow and build their own legacy. So I want to be able to be a part of that.
What do you feel like is stopping you now from doing that? Because you can come to those, obviously they're your kids, so you can come anytime you want.
But my work schedule is so busy. So I feel like the only option to choose is when we're home. So we're eating and then we have this home time. But if we can balance out where like maybe you can take some of that time and I can actually be a part of their activities, I would really like that a lot.
I see. Okay, so what about this? What if in the evenings, on nights where you need an extra hour, you do an extra hour of work to make up for it? But can I ask that when you do that, can you just go into a completely separate room? Because I don't like it when the kids and we see that you're here, but you're not really here. And it makes us feel like we're not a priority. So what if you just went to the home office and just separate yourself completely for an hour and then come back.
No, I'm fine to do that. Or I could just stay at work and then not worry about that time and then just come home for dinner and help out in that way, but use the other time for their activities, and I'll be present during that time.
Okay.
Okay. Cool.
Fist bump. That was a good husband conversation right there.
That was a good compromise.
It was a good compromise. And part of the, therapist's goal in that situation too would be to, after the roadmap has been created and that they can both understand one another's values, the therapist's role should be to then look at the conversation and present other solutions, right? What are other activities that could play into your desire to build a legacy and play into my need for connectedness? There's very specific things that could be suggested, and a lot of additional guidance that could be given. For example, the therapist might say, are there areas in legacy building that you feel like your husband could help you with? Because maybe there are. Maybe my skill set would be very appropriate for what you need. And you'd say, could you help me take on a management role to find people? And I said, well, I'm with the kids all day. Well, what if we had a nanny part-time? Well, yeah, in that case I could. And now what just happened is that we've created a new opportunity for us to spend time together where I can relate to exactly what you're trying to do, but not only relate, but help you with it. And then when you're engaged and when you're doing family activities, you would feel probably even more present, because not only am I taking part of your stress off you in terms of like your goals and your desires, but then you're also recognizing that I'm spending that time and I'm doing that thing. So you'd be more likely to engage in the things that I want to do.
No, absolutely. Or even, it could even be small things too, right? Like if, for example, the person, if you're at home all the time, you're not going to have a lot of time to yourself because it's all about the kids and then all the responsibilities. So if you had more time for yourself, whether exercise or doing something that you're passionate about on your own, right? Then it would be easier for me to connect with you on a more connected level, on an intimacy level, because I'm seeing your independence come out.
Yeah.
Right. So that could be the connected component of our relationship that could help grow and develop more intimacy.
Now, the interesting thing is that if we were to play this conversation out in front of traditional counseling, the guidance would not be anything like what we just did. For example, if I started with, I feel like all you do is work. When you're home, you're working. When you're away, you're working. All you're doing is working.
Yes. And then
what would the counselor say?
You need to take ownership of how you feel and discuss the event. So I would say, I feel like I was present and I was available.
But you weren't. You're never available.
And I feel upset that I feel like you're attacking me right now and it's making me anxious.
And then the therapist say, well,
how do you feel?
When you're saying those statements, we don't use things like always and never because those aren't really true, are they? Well, no, they're not really true, but except in this case, he's always doing this. He's a dick.
So I feel like when you use the dick word, I feel like shutting down more.
You didn't last night. Sorry, that was like right there. You teed that one up really nicely.
Thanks, man. But yeah, it's the nuance. Like, we're playing it out, but really, like, that's the difference, right? It's this box. Like, let's act normal instead of like going to the core of it and address the issues. Let's just try to pretend that everything is normal and do it in this normal way. Versus no, like, let's lay things out and let's just get to it.
Yeah, this is traditional therapy and counseling, is that we're going to focus on the specific words and the way that you're saying things, as opposed to what's happening. Why are they? And what ends up happening is that you get this very symptomatic painkiller type effect, right? I have a headache. I took some Excedrin or a painkiller. We don't want to be biased towards any brand. I took a painkiller. It went away for 2 hours and then it comes back again because the underlying thing is still there. So a person might go to therapy, feel better for a day, and then have the same issue reoccur again.
But that's why then you go back again the next week. And then you go back again the next week. And then it just becomes this airing out. Let's air this out and then let's have the temporary relief and then let's go back at it again next week.
Fight in front of a judge.
Let's do this again.
And that's how we turn therapy into a subscription.
And it becomes a cyclical thing where like nothing really ever gets solved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So why don't we help people understand then, because we're getting down to when do you know it's worth working on versus when do you know it's time to walk away. Well, most of the conversations that we've had so far, I would say that they are positive conversations. They are signals of like, this is moments where it's worth working on, right? But I think the key difference, knowing when to work on something and when to walk away, this is the tough piece, is because there's this idea of cognitive distortion. You know this idea better than I do, but I'm gonna give my attempt to explain this. Okay.
Do it.
So we tend to latch onto these things that matter to us for whatever reason, and oftentimes they're negative things. And so let's say that, well, I'm going to give an example in business. You get 100 positive reviews on your business and one negative one.
And you're going to focus on that negative.
I'm going to focus on the negative one. And I almost dismiss the fact that 99 out of those 100 customers were happy.
Yeah.
And I can become so fixated that I'm trying to fix something in my business that doesn't actually need to be fixed, because 99 out of 100 customers are happy. Would you say that that's accurate in describing a cognitive distortion?
Yeah. So the actual term for that is mental filtering, right? So you're only focusing on the negatives and you're discounting the positives.
Okay. And the mental filtering is a type of distortion then?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So because of this, we can do the same thing in our relationships, right? Where if you're in a, let's say, a relatively healthy relationship where 70 to 80% of things are good. I mean, you have beautiful children, you have a home, you have this life that you've built, and for the most part, things are good. But intimacy is lacking, and you're not connected with one another. That then becomes everything. You ignore the 70, 80% that's good,
Agreed.
and you fixate on the 20% that's missing.
Yeah. And usually that comes from your own wounds that you brought to the relationship. Right. So like a lot of times, like, we talked about this process of couples issues and individual accountability. So like if your relationship has a lot of like shared core values and a lot of positive things, usually the part that's missing is the part that you need to work on yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in any relationship, friendship, romantic, business, marriage, family, in any relationship, if you can get past that mental filter, and this is the tough part, you have to understand that there is this, and when you're in that place where you're unhappy, you're going to have a tendency to see only the negative. It's kind of like wearing a negative set of goggles, right?
Yes.
You need to put yourself in a mindset and in a place where you don't have those negative goggles on. Put yourself in that space where you can evaluate the relationship objectively. And if you're seeing truthfully 70, 80, 90% bad, it's time to go.
No, I agree. And then this is the other thing too. Like when you look at expectations of your partner, if it's expectations that are in line with who they are as a person and their core values, that's a reasonable expectation. But if it's an expectation based on what you want and that really doesn't fall in line with who they are, those are issues that you need to resolve yourself. Yeah.
So getting past the cognitive distortion, that mental filter of that piece is difficult because you have to evaluate from a place where you're objective and look at it and say, is what I'm looking at by and large unhealthy? And if it is, that is what we would define as a toxic relationship. It's a relationship that takes more than it provides in return. And really, any healthy relationship should be synergistic. You should never create a friendship, a romance, a partnership, and expect that your life is going to get more difficult. That is not how relationships work, right? You don't, anytime you create a relationship and your life does not get better, that's a problem. That's an immediate red flag.
Yeah. And if you're just extremely tired and irritated after a meeting, you know that this is probably not a good relationship.
Correct.
Period.
And on the flip side, if you can get past that distortion, get past that mental filter and look at it and go, actually, there's 10, 20% of stuff that I would work on, but for the most part, this is pretty good. Then you can say, let's look at the 20% now and see what that is. And like you said, maybe some of those expectations are actually coming from your own sets of values and your own existing trauma. It's not even something for the other person to resolve. It's on you to resolve.
No, for sure. Or maybe you've just outgrown the relationship itself, right? Like, for example, we talked about like narcissists attracting people pleasers, So if you're the kind of the people pleaser in the relationship, but ultimately, I don't feel like people pleasing anymore. I'm
Yeah.
becoming my own person. Our core values are not aligned. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm out. That's a healthy decision that you're making because you're actually use that relationship to heal your wounds. You took accountability. Now you're assessing your core values with the person that you're with. Yeah, this is not for me anymore.
But I'd also say that that falls into the other kind of general rule that we gave, which is when you objectively look at it, it's not providing benefit. It's not giving you anything.
No, I agree. I mean, this is where like there's a fine line though. Like relationships that are energy draining, like if there's just really toxic, you just got to leave. But then sometimes the reason people don't leave is because even though it's draining, there's a positive to it in that they're learning and they're processing their pains. And
Sure.
that's a reason to still stay, even though it's hurtful.
That is a fine line. And I agree that it's difficult. To me, it comes back to, and I'm going to give a personal example of this one, right? Let me give an example with one of my family members. For the most part, it's a positive relationship, but there have been times where it turns into and this isn't a relationship by blood, but we consider each other family, right? But there have been times where it turns into a negative relationship. Usually when in cases where I didn't set boundaries, I became kind of the people pleaser, and I would just continually do things that I didn't want to do, expecting that they were going to do them in return, right? Gets me to a place where there's so much resentment that I can't even have a conversation with the person because they can't see my side. That I could look at that and I have this feeling that so many people look at a relationship like that and go, it's toxic, but it's not. I'm the one that was toxic. I'm the one that was holding on to this piece of resentment. And when I would look at it, and I even had conversations with you about it.
Yeah.
I would have conversation with you where I would say, if I look at this objectively, I would be a fool to walk away from this. So why am I so fixated on these things? Why do I see so much anger and frustration and toxicity from it when objectively I go, everything about this is fine? But I even told you, I'm like, at one point I was like, I'm willing to walk away from all of it. And I was telling you that there's this 0 or 1 mentality where it's binary thinking.
It's all or nothing.
It's all or nothing. We're either this tight and we're this, or we're nothing.
Nothing.
That was a place that I feel like most people would say the relationship was toxic, and it wasn't. And that's where I'm trying to be very cautious here, because once I resolved that, which was trauma related, once I resolved that one issue and I set up healthy boundaries, the relationship went straight back to being fully healthy.
Yeah. And it's like, wow, we share this core value together, and that's awesome. And you weren't expecting any more than that anymore.
No. And so that's where I have a hard time with. You're right that it's a fine line, but the indicator to me of toxic versus, let's say the relationship is toxic versus I have toxic expectations.
Agreed.
The difference between those two things is objectively looking at the relationship from what's positive and what's negative. If I can objectively look at it and say, the majority of the relationship and what we created together and the things that we do together, the majority is positive, then what's likely happening is that I have it's me. Yeah. I'm the toxic one.
And that's important to know. Like, on the personal coaching side, one of the clients was like, I just want to know whether this relationship, it's a bad relationship, or is it me, or is it a little bit of both?
Mm-hmm.
And then once we we're getting to the space of like looking at the shared core values, four out of the 5 core values were in alignment.
Yeah.
And then we looked at like the past and all the issues that they were having, and they were kind of relaying all the pains of their upbringing, which meant this is you, man. You got to work on it.
And that's where I'm so cautious about this.
Yeah.
You get me? Like,
yeah.
Because in so many cases, I've seen so many case studies. Before we were working together, I worked with a number of people just informally. And I watched an unhealthy marriage turn healthy with the simple understanding of just their core values. Once they understood where they both were coming from, it took like 4 sessions, 5 sessions,
Yeah.
and everything transformed.
Yeah.
But the general view, if you were to go online and if they were to go and ask their friends, should I stay? Their friends would say, that's toxic, man. If they were to go online and say, this is what's going on. Oh, that's toxic, man. You got to get out. And this is where I'm like, look, you have to take off those negative goggles. You have to take off that filter and look at it objectively. And if you can say objectively that this relationship is making your life worse, it's time to go.
Yeah, but I mean, objectively means self-aware to the point that you understand who you are and what you value in your life.
Correct.
That is objectivity.
And that's difficult.
Yeah, it takes a lot of honesty with yourself. And then also the behaviors, like your example, you had to be like, man, I did this. This had nothing to do with them.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a lot of courage and conviction to do that.
Yeah. So that to me is I don't know. It's one of those things where there's not a simple, well, I guess that's as simple as I could make it. I always look for the simplicity in something, right? The spiritual simplicity, the religious simplicity is you don't get divorced. You work through it. I think that's wrong.
I agree.
The worldview is if it's not serving you anymore, it's toxic. Get out. And I think that realistically, the right answer is somewhere in between. It's worth working on until you know it's not.
Yeah, once again, it's not all or nothing. Like maybe you start with boundary setting first.
Correct.
Well, first you got to be self-aware. You got to know yourself first. And then maybe set some boundaries. And if that doesn't work and it's super toxic, then maybe you let it go at that point.
Yeah. It's going to be fun when we release these books to like just fully public, right? Because all the friends that wouldn't necessarily come to coaching, they would probably read the book, not together necessarily, but eventually I hope that what we're creating is comes common knowledge. And even the 2 friends that we gave an example of, if we were to play back that conversation, me valuing independence and you valuing this
Loyalty,
connectedness and loyalty, right? Even if we were to play that back as friends, and let's say that the vernacular and the understanding that we're creating becomes as commonplace as like love languages, because I hear people referring love languages all the time, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm a gifts person. I'm a this.
Affirmation.
I'm affirmations. But if I were to come back to you as a friend and say, look, dude, I know you're perceiving it that way, but that's not it. It's not that I don't want to hang out with you. It's not that I'm unloyal to you. In fact, you're one of my closest friends. You have to understand that I'm antisocial. And I don't mean that in like a negative way. I just mean my values are centered around independence. I like being alone. That's when I feel like I'm getting energy back. And I love hanging out with you, and I will. But don't take me saying no, or I don't want to hang out as like something personal.
No, and I appreciate that because, I just want to hang out. That's why. Because that's just really important to me. But I get it. Like, it feels like you're rejecting me, but you're not. You're just doing your own thing. But when you do have time,
and you know what? I need to do better with inviting you, and I'll be sure to do that. I'll be sure to invite you more on things so you know.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. Thanks.
Yeah. All right, dude. Let's close this one out. So, in making this call, in terms of knowing when a relationship no longer serves you, number one, I'd say when it comes to friendships, unless it's first actively just negative and damaging, if it is that, then cut it off. But otherwise, if core values just aren't in alignment, just allow the relationship to naturally distance itself. Doesn't need to be anything like crazy. Would you agree with that? It doesn't need to be any over drawn out, like, oh, we're not friends anymore, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, just going back to the building analogy, once you know your core values, you have a firm building structure to make good decisions.
Yeah. Then going into, okay, well, what about, we're talking about a marriage now, right? I am of the opinion that it's worth exhausting your options. If this once started in a healthy place and, things aren't functioning right now, it's worth exhausting your options before choosing divorce.
No, I definitely agree. Like, you have to be really self-aware. This is where, like, to me, like, this is a difference between like regular traditional counseling and CVFT. Traditional counseling is a consequence-based mentality. So whether, like, if you leave a relationship, the consequences is going to be really painful, right? CVFT is a foundational process making, whether you stay, leave, whatever the decision making is, it's going to feel better and empowering because you're basing it off of the roots of who you are as a person.
Yeah.
So like to me, I just want to stress the point, whether you stay, leave, set boundaries, it's not so much about that as long as you're basing it off of who you are and the core values that you're living.
Yeah. You're essentially saying it's not as important which decision you're going with. It's more important that you're making that decision from a healthy and secure place.
Exactly. Because if you're the building that's in a swamp, even if you make a healthy decision, it's going to feel energy draining because you're just not in a space to make those good decisions.
Mm-hmm. The next piece of that too is when we're evaluating the relationship, if you want to know really a baseline, is that really every relationship, it should be making your life better. I mean, that's just a general rule. A relationship should be making your life better. So if you can think objectively, if you can take that negative pair of goggles off and ignore the mental filtering and everything else and look at it and say, this is actually a bad relationship, like through and through, then you kind of know. In general, though, I think from our own experiences, we would say that if a marriage started from a healthy place and we have two people, doesn't really matter how unhealthy it's gotten to, if we have two people that are willing to come at it and to work at it, it will very likely work with at least through core value focused therapy. But that's another sign of it. When you have enough damage done and one person or both people have no desire, no regard for one another, then again, a surefire way to know that this is probably not gonna work out. I mean, if one person just unwilling, then really it's just a matter of time of waiting until the other person has had so much pain that they're willing to just kind of like make the call on their own.
No, I agree. And if you're aligned with your core values and you have a firm foundation, no matter how painful it is to let go of a relationship, it'll still bring energy knowing that it's the right choice for you.
Yeah, I like that you're bringing that up and focusing in on that because we do have a lot of coaching clients that are coming personally just as an individual, right? And they're trying to do just that. They're trying to get themselves to a place where they're healthy and secure in their own place, in their own mind, to be able to make that decision from a good place. So that's a huge part of what we do as well, is if you're dealing with that kind of a situation, that's why we have personal coaching in addition to couples coaching, where we have two people that are willing. Couples coaching is fantastic. But when you have one person that they're the only ones that are willing to do the work and they want to figure out what is going on, then that's what it's there for. It's to help you to know it doesn't matter what of these decisions you choose. What matters is that you choose what's right and from a healthy place for yourself.
Yeah, and from a personal coaching standpoint, we're assessing all of your relationships, right? Where couples, it's really focused on the intimacy of the couple.
Correct. Thank you for clarifying that too. Okay, so that's it for us. If you guys want to drop us a review, well, if you found this useful, it helps us a ton to drop us a review on the iTunes store. You can hop on the 12-Week Relationship Podcast, leave a lovely review. Helps us to kind of grow the podcast and platform. We hope you all dug the episode. If you like what we're talking about, well, we do have personal as well as couples coaching available at 12weekrelationships.com, where you can sign up for the wait list. And we'll include the link in the description of the video if you're watching this on YouTube. But if you're just listening, you can go to 12weekrelationships.com and you can just click the button, join the waitlist. Meantime, find us on Instagram, on TikTok, and drop us a line. We love taking suggestions on questions that you guys have. If you guys have something that you want us to talk about anonymously, you can actually DM us. We'll bring it onto the podcast and we'll discuss without using any names whatsoever. But yeah, we hope you're enjoying. And that's it for us. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Okay. See you guys next time.